So this is 1309 GMT on Saturday, the 18th of July, 2020. This is the test edition of this time of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. We are doing the recording for this time of the day, updating some of the stories that we have been reporting on or commenting on exclusively with our original contents, copyrights asserted. The latest news that we have from Tower Hamlets affecting the community in Tower Hamlets obviously includes the news about Shamima Begum, who has been given permission by the Court of Appeal in London to be allowed to return to the UK to pursue her challenge to Sajid Javid scrapping her British citizenship. That was in the news 2 days ago, and it has been continuing to be featured in the communications and comments in the British mainstream newspapers and the media, mainly the print newspapers. We shall be commenting on that today in this short edition of the test bulletin. And there is also the news that the current constitution of the Tower Hamlets Council, as a elected mayor-led council, local council, is unacceptable, and it is failing to serve the needs of the community and to safeguard the community. So we should be updating on that, including comments on the death of June Harvey, the 85-year-old local person in London E3 on the crane crash on the 7th of July. There is the findings in the tribunal case brought against Tower Hamlets Council by Mark Edmonds, alleging widespread systematic corruption in the youth service in the council. So the current edition of the so-called satirical magazine Private Eye has a detailed piece summarizing that outcome. But the point that we make from that rejection by the tribunal of Mark Edmonds' claim against Tower Hamlets Council is that in the proceedings during the hearing and the pursuit of the claim through the tribunal system, Mark Edmonds brought about evidence that showed widespread, deep-seated, endemic corruption and criminality in the youth service in Tower Hamlets Council. We commented on this before, and we comment again on the fact that there were at least incidents of money being stolen by members of the Tower Hamlets Council staff in the youth service, who transferred money to their friends, mates, and co-conspirators and co-criminals. And that included, according to the item in Private Eye, dated yesterday, at least £2 million that was actually earmarked or allocated for the so-called PREVENT program funded by the UK central government. PREVENT meaning prevent people, young people mainly, from being radicalized by so-called Islamic militants and terror organizations. And so that money has been, according to Private Eye, transferred to unknown, in this article, unknown friends and co-conspirators or co-criminals employed in the Tower Hamlets Council Youth Service. Now, this is a short version of the full actual contents that are not available in the other newspapers, but this is the Private Eye version, Beyond Belief. Now, the Beyond Belief piece has the last paragraph, which I shall be reading from, And obviously the item that I'm reading from belongs to private eye in terms of copyrights and any authorship rights that they are entitled to assert. So this last paragraph says conspicuous. It means, very clearly evident, conspicuous by his absence from the witness box during the actual proceedings of the Mark Edmonds claim against our Honours Council. So, conspicuous by his absence from the witness box was Youth Services boss Dinar Hussain, Dinar, Dinar Hussain, Hossain. So I'll read the paragraph starting with conspicuous again. Conspicuous by his absence from the witness box was Youth Services boss Dinar Hussain, who took voluntary redundancy in 2015. On his watch, at least £2 million, including funds from the Home Office anti-radicalization prevent budget, was paid to youth services providers that were either fictitious or run by council staff to promote Bangladeshi politicians. Hussain gave the tribunal a statement denying wrongdoing and alleging racism by Bamber's team. So that's the last paragraph in the piece headlined Beyond Belief in Private Eye, issue number 1526, and it covers the fortnight from 17th of July to 30th of July 2020. And this is the front cover of the Private Eye, dated from yesterday for a fortnight. And this is the only publication that we have seen any mention of that outcome of the Mark Edmonds tribunal claim against our Honours Council. As I have said before, it is of absolutely no significance that the tribunal failed to uphold Mark Edmonds' claim because of the absolutely widespread evidence that came out during his claim of widespread endemic criminality and corruption taking place within the Tower Hamlets Council Youth Service. Now, that is symptomatic. That evidence is symptomatic, representative, typical of the corruption, illegality, unaccountability, abuse of resources, and lack of responsibility, lack of delivering the duty by the council in other areas of the council's functions, including, as I said already yesterday, the duty to safeguard children. Although it is relatable to the so-called anti-radicalization program, the PREVENT program, the duty to safeguard children is an independent duty in terms of the remit, because it doesn't actually depend on any other part of the council's duties, because the safeguarding of children is paramount and fundamental, regardless of the level of delivery and service by the council in other parts. And on that sector or platform or obligation of duty to safeguard children, Tower Hamlets Council was found at fault in a report published by Ofsted in March 2017. And as I have said in previous text editions of the KhoodeelaarTV channel, the person that was identified by name and by behavior was at that time, up to that time, the chair of John Biggs's so-called cabinet in charge of safeguarding children responsibilities. And this person named by the Ofsted report was a person called Saunders, Rachel Saunders. Rachel Saunders has now left the Towners Council, ceased to be a councillor. She has landed a highly paid, lucrative position in the same field in terms of children and education, etc. We shall come to that and come to the actual impact of reports like the Ofsted report, which is very critical, but which has been ignored in effect in the main because the evidence is there, because Towners Council fails to safeguard children. And our campaign first noticed the preponderance, the prevalence of safeguarding children duties being neglected by Towners Council during a meeting held in June 2016 at the Micro Business Centre in Greater Egg Street off Hanbury Street in Brick Lane area. That was actually a meeting sparked by a report byline to Ted Jury on the Independent Online, which identified a man called Ian Devlin as one of the convicted killers of Shiblu Rahman about 15 years earlier. And the reason why that was important was that it was discovered that Ian Devlin was employed in a school called Ian Mikado School, which is a school for special children, special needs children in the same E3 area, Burr London E3 area, where the actual murder of Shiblu Rahman took place in 2001. And I think that the meeting that took place in June 2016 at the Micro Business Centre was itself sabotaged in order to protect and shield from criticism John Biggs, the current executive mayor at that time as well. He had been executive mayor since 11th of June 2015 when an election was held as a direct result of Richard Morey, the election commissioner's ruling that kicked Lutfur Rahman out of his post for corrupt practices. And so that meeting was, although it was organized as a kind of protest against Ian Devlin being given that position in the Ian Mikado School, the effect was to shield John Biggs from criticism. And this became absolutely confirmed in July next year, which is in the same year, July the next month, July 2016, when the Tower Hamlets Council's bogus full council meeting took place, and John Biggs was given the platform to make a series of pro-racist, dishonest, corrupt, opportunistic excuses for Ian Devlin being given the rehabilitation and the defiance of the outraged anti-racists generally in the community. Because of the refusal or unwillingness on the part of certain witnesses who knew about the Ian Devlin tenure at the Ian Mikado School, our campaign was not able to pursue to the logical, necessary, ethical, overdue conclusion that part of the campaign at that time. But we are still open to people if they're willing to come forward with evidence that actually shows the real extent of criminality and collusion between Ian Mikado School, Claire Lillis, the head teacher at that time, and the John Biggs regime. Because in 2015, in August 2015, a year before the Ted Jury bylined piece appeared in the Independent, the Tower Hamlets Council's then still publishing East End, I call it East End Lies, not George Galloway, who imitated my designation of it and did not give me credit for that original denunciation and diagnostics when Galloway gave evidence as part of his being an MP in the name of the Bethnal Green and Bow constituency during 2006 in the House of Commons to the so-called Crossrail Select Committee. Now, the East End Lies has now been replaced by another lying outfit which still peddles the myths of John Biggs being an efficient, competent, responsible, non-racist, caring elected mayor in post. That is absolute myth, and that is something that has to be challenged every day and removed and replaced by a truth-telling outlet or series of outlets or operation. So the East End Lies was caught on evidence in August 2015 as splashing big picture of Ian Devlin on the front page of the East End Lies. And the actual actual excuse, the pretext and the pretense was that this convicted killer, whom they did not name as a convicted killer at all in that promotional piece, but effectively that's what he was, that this convicted killer was saving the life of or helping significantly a neighbor of his at the time, a female neighbor of his of African Caribbean background. This is very significant because this is a kind of deflection, double deflection, showing a convicted racist killer helping an Afro-Caribbean person. And the killer was not mentioned as a killer, but as a savior, as a very helpful neighbor to an Afro-Caribbean person. And this same killer had killed an Asian person. That is something that is very sophisticated and subtle division and divisiveness practiced on that occasion by the people who devised the script and decided the editorial decision at that time for the East End Lies. And John Biggs did not mention this. Nobody in the council mentioned this until the fact of Ian Devlin being given a post for several years was published in the Independent piece bylined to Ted Jury. We have said it for the third or fourth time in this piece, so that the authoring rights belong to him for that particular report and journalism. Now, it has been nearly, full 5 years now. 4 years and 1 month since that meeting in the Micro Business Center was held in June 2016. And there has been no action by any of the sitting councillors at that time or any of the sitting councillors since the 2018 council election about this issue. And the significance of this is that people in the Bangladeshi community who are councillors or who were shown to be among the organizers of that so-called protest meeting at the Micro Business Center in June 2016 sabotaged my planned and agreed challenge of John Biggs and the Tower Hamlets Council regime fronted by him at that July 2016 meeting. Several members of the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets lied to me and changed their line, and they said that Biggs, in his big speech, was going to answer all our questions. That is a lie, and that was a lie that they knew would be a lie. And all these so-called leaders of the community against racism were sucking up to Biggs when before the meeting, there was a so-called assembly or rally outside the Mulberry Place in July 2016. And every single one, except me, present there, was desperately trying to be seen, physically seen, and photographed, talking to or exchanging with John Biggs. There was a big, heavy pack of signatures, apparently signatures that were handed to Biggs. And Biggs was visually being dismissive of every single one of them. And I don't have to name them because they're on the video. And it is absolutely corrupt and absolutely collusive with the racists and with the liars in the council. And we have to find a council which is fit for purpose, which doesn't have people making decisions who are liars, who are deniers, and who are so narrow minded and petty that they actually forget the pledges that they give during election time to the people whose votes they depend on. So that's about Shiblu Rahman and the area where Shiblu Rahman was murdered, the area where June Harvey has been killed by the crane is the same area. And it's not far from the area in Burdett Road where a young mother was killed in 2018 by falling bricks as she was returning to go to work after leaving her child at the school nearby. And that is also not far from the Mile End Park where the child, 5-year-old child, was killed by a defective installation in the Mile End Park just the day before her 5th birthday. So these are three examples: June Harvey and this young mother and this 5-year-old child were all of them killed due to the lack of building control regime by the Tower Hamlets Council. So we have been talking about this and we shall be continuing to talk about this. And the bottom line is that so long as Biggs is in place, or so long as there is an elected mayor in place, in power, and not the elected councillors being able to speak openly and without fear or favor in defense of the safety rights and safeguarding rights of the children and community, there will be tragedies and there will be losses of lives and there will be insecurity in the area in the council. And this links neatly, topically, to the threat that is being revived by the landlords that they will be evicting people and they will be starting eviction proceedings in a few weeks' time or even before that. Now, we are introducing in this version a topic that we'll be daily reporting on and updating on, which is the harassment. Now, the legal structure of the UK court system is so deficient that it doesn't actually recognize the many legal rights and entitlements from harassment that renters, private renters, and private residents are entitled to. They are entitled to on paper, in law, but they are not enforced by the courts. And one court case that I actually appeared in defending a group of victims of Tower Hamlets Council's corruption and lying in August 2015 is in the Burr County Court. I represented the victims, or at least one victim, and the council was represented by a barrister who is overstated as a barrister and who I have got a series of evidential complaints against. His name is Edward Fitzpatrick. Now, Edward Fitzpatrick is a racist, criminal, liar. His actual chamber is the chamber based in Garden Courts chamber in the Lincoln's Inn. Now, Edwards was nowhere near anywhere, even if he was born in 73, when I had my first tussle with the Lincoln's Inn. I was trying to get registered as a barrister, and the tussle ended up by my not getting registered because I took on the racists in control at the Lincoln Center at the time. That was 1973. Now, we shall be talking more about this case that I appeared in the later editions, just to say that the experience shows that there is no justice for the victims of council criminality and corruption that can be found in county courts or in ordinary courts. When she visited the uh, county court in in Shoreditch and Clerkenwell, which is called now Shoreditch and Clerkenwell and Shoreditch County Court, the Guardian's columnist Polly Toynbee described in a phrase she referred to a kindly judge. She apparently went to court to observe how people are being evicted and possession orders are being granted by county courts against people. That was a few years ago. So it wasn't under any moratorium or ban on evictions proceedings. That was a few years ago. So that was the normal period. And she said that a kindly judge allowed a particular application or a group of applicants. We shall be broadcasting the actual text of Polly Toynbee's statement. The significance of referring to that is that she called a kindly judge, which means there were, and there must be by definition, unkindly judges. And that is the fact. Most of the county courts in England, which is also called England and Wales, are dominated by barristers who are racist, who are ignorant about the law, and who are prejudiced, and who are actually being allowed to run riot against the rights of the people that are enshrined in the rest of the legislation or legislative frameworks, of which a number of international treaties exist which guarantee rights against harassment, rights against abuse of the court powers by the judges and the judiciary. And we shall be giving names and chapter and verses of court cases that I have been involved in and I am involved in now. And we shall see just how unfit for purpose the legal system is. The English system, miscalled English and Welsh system, is miscalled as the justice system. The fact is, the evidence is, there is no justice system in this country. And as I have discussed before about David Neuberger, who was the president of the Supreme Court, a few months before he was recruited by David Lidington, then the front man for Theresa May, and doing the Brexiting PR. And Neuberger said that if Brexit happens or after Brexit happened, London would become the most lucrative legal business center for the world. What a grotesque admission by the just recently retired president of the Supreme Court, which in the Belhaj case in January 2017 had earned a rare reputation of being a source of almost near fairness. And I think that is not representative of the general behavior conduct decisions and the bureaucratic obstruction against justice that is operated by the Supreme Court, by the tribunal system, by the Court of Appeal, by the rest of the High Court, by the Administrative Court, and most certainly not by the county courts, not by the Magistrates' Court. And so therefore we'll be covering all of these court injustices or unjust court system. Miscarriage of justice is not a rarity in Britain, it is a normality. So we shall be, this is a new contribution of analysis, and I will be updating on this in due course in later editions. And we then go to the role played by the people who got the funding from the then elected mayor in post, Lutfur, and the funding include the funding to various destinations, groups and persons who did not even ask for grants. Now, this is worse than anything that could be found in the so-called banana republics. And we shall be coming to discussing the role of those people in the community, in defense of the community, in support of the services, needs, and requirements of the community, in whose name they were given the public funding by the Luther fronted regime. And we shall be asking again for people to publish the accounts, not accounts like the number of employees so-called or the sum of money that they receive, but actual work they did. The work they did that can be verified by reference to independent members of the community, objective members of the community, and we can see how the misuse and abuse was carried out. And we can stop that. And we can only stop that if we have a democratic elected local council. So this edition of the test broadcast is ending now at 13:41 hours GMT, 2:41 p.m. on Saturday, the 18th of July 2020. Khuda Hafiz, goodbye.